Hello, scholars. We are here again. Now we're on lesson 11, still working on fractions and comparing them. Before we start with today's content, I want to read your application problem to you all that you are going to complete independently. It says Rachel, Sylvia, and Lola each received the same homework assignment and only completed part of it. I know none of you all are like them. You all do all of your homework. Rachel completed 1/6 of her homework. Sylvia completed 1/2 of her homework, and Lola completed 1/4 of her homework. Write the amount of homework each girl completed from least to greatest. Draw a picture to prove your answer. There are two parts to actually kind of three to this word problem. So first you have to figure out um, who completed more work. There's really two parts. Who completed more work? And to do that, you have to look at the fractions. The fractions are 1/6, 1/2, and 1/4. So remember last class we talked about if you start off with a big number, the section is smaller. If you start off with a smaller number, the section is larger. So use that same method looking here. Who completed a bigger section of their homework? Who completed the least amount of homework? Okay? So you're figuring that out, and you're going to write it from least to greatest. So whoever did the smallest amount of homework, that's who you're going to start off with first. Whoever did the most homework, that's who you're going to end up with last. So to complete that, I would put like 1, 2, 3, and I would do the least, the middle, and the most homework. So you could list it out like that. After that, it says draw a picture to prove your answer. So you're going to draw a picture showing 1/6, 1/2, and 1/4. So for those, I would just draw. Actually, you figured it out. I'm confident that you can figure it out. Okay. So it's two parts of this. Make sure you list it from least to greatest, who did the least amount of work to who did the most work, and then you're going to draw a picture to represent each of your unit fractions. Okay. At the bottom, don't forget you have a written response explaining your answer. So don't forget to do that as well. I should see at least one strong third grade sentence there at the bottom of your sheet. All right. So once you are done, you are able to come back and join us for lesson 11. And I have written my objective again up here today to make sure that you all understand what we are doing today. So I have written them in my objective statements in different colors, so we could break it down into three different parts. So first you have compare unit fractions. We know what that means. We did that last class. We looked at different fractions and determined which one was larger, which one was smaller. Okay? In green it says with different size models. Different size models. So what that means is you might have a square where you have to show 1/2. You may have a circle where you have to show 1/2. You may have a circle where you have to show 1/3. Okay, so different size models means the different shapes that you're having to draw to represent different fractions. They're going to be different sizes. Some of them will be in eighths, some of them will be in half, some of them will be in fourths. It's just different. Okay. And lastly, it says representing the whole. So you're comparing unit fractions with different size models, different shapes, representing the whole. So if someone asks you to draw a model showing a circle showing 1/3, okay, this circle still represents the whole. Okay, that's not quite even. The circle represents the whole. Okay. If you have a square where you're showing halves, the square represents the whole. Okay, so just know that the entire shape represents a whole. So we're comparing fractions today, looking at different size models or different size shapes. Okay, so let's get started. On your first page of your problem set, it says label the unit fraction, and each blank draw and label the same whole, so the same shape that they're using, with a shaded unit fraction that makes the sentence true. There is more than one correct way to make the sentence true. So this is a little bit of a fun activity, but it's also pushing you to think. Okay, you're going to have to create some things on your own. So let's get started with number 1. Actually, let's look at the example first. I'll draw it out larger so you can see it here on my board. So this is what you have. You have 1/4, and I drew a circle. Don't laugh, Miss Brina, can I draw? Okay. I can make that a little bit better. And there's one of those sections filled in. So this whole circle that's representing the whole, I have 1/4 of it shaded in. And in the middle, it has is less than. Okay, so ultimately what you're having to do is you're having to create another circle that is shows that 1/4 is less than. So for this example, it has 1/4 is less than. Still use the circle. Have to use a circle. I could not make a square here because the whole is the same, which is a circle. So to make this sentence true, 1/4 is less than 1/2. Okay, so you're making your own. You're finishing the sentence to make it true. Okay, so if it says instead of less than, if it said more than, this will not be true because 1/4 is not more than 1/2. Okay, let's walk through number 1 together. Let me get my laptop charger. I'll be right back. Take a little wiggle break. About 30 more seconds. All right, sorry about that. Let me make sure it's plugged in. You should be back in ready in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and we are back. So let's look at number 1. I think you all are going to have so much fun doing this once you understand what we're doing. So we have a square sectioned into thirds. You don't have to draw this, but I'm drawing it so you can see it a little bit better. See what I'm doing here. So I need 2 lines. There we go. That looks pretty good. It's a little bit crooked, but that's okay. Could fix that. Okay, so we have our square section into thirds. It's hard to do it with a marker. Okay. So we have our thirds, and 1 is shaded in. So we know the fraction to represent this model is 1/3 or 1/3. And in the middle, it says is greater than. Okay. So 1/3 is greater than what? If we still had to use a square, okay, we know that 1/3, looking at 3, is a small number, so the section is larger. So now we need to make, we can still use a square. They do not have to be thirds, but the sections need to be smaller so we can make the sentence true to show that 1/3 is greater than whatever we draw here. So our denominator has to be larger than 3, because if we do 1/2, that means we're just splitting it down the middle, and 1/3 is not greater than 1/2. So we cannot use 1/2. We need to use a fraction that has a denominator greater than 3. So for an example, we could do 1/4. 1/3 is greater than 1/4. That's true. So now we need to draw this square. We need to section it or partition it into fourths and shade in 1. Okay, so now 1/3 is greater than 1/4 because this section is way bigger than that fourth there. So that is what you're doing. You're looking at the fractions you're starting off with, and you have to use whatever the sentence is in the middle to make it true. Okay, I will do one more with you. I hope you all are understanding. This is a Miss Breeden really enjoys this this type of math. So next we have a rectangle, and it's partitioned into fifths. So I know I need to draw 4 lines to 1, 2, 3, 4. Could be a little bit better than that. Here we go. And then it has this one in the center that's shaded in. So what's this fraction? 1/5. 1/5. There's one section shaded in out of the 5 sections. Okay. Our sentence in the middle says is less than. So we already know whatever we draw here in our rectangle has to be less than 1/5. So let's take the time to think about what this new fraction needs to include. First, we want the section smaller. So should our number be larger than 5? Or should it be smaller than 5? Think about that. It's a little bit tricky, but think about it. We know that the bigger the number, the smaller the section. Here we want to draw a model that has a section that is smaller than 1/5. So do we need to make our denominator bigger, or do we need to make it smaller? That's right, we need to make it larger. If we want to make it less than 1/5, that means that 1/5 is going to be greater than whatever we draw over here. So let's partition this into 1/8. Okay, so that means I need 7 lines. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a little small over here. Make them even. It's so important that when you're partitioning things that they are equal. Okay. So 1/8. Let's see, is this true? That 1/5 is less than 1/8? Think about it. Is 1/5 less than 1/8? Is this piece of cake smaller than this piece of cake? No, it's not. You got tricked. So we need something that 1/5 is less than. So that means our fraction here should be bigger than what we have here. It should be bigger than 1/5. So let's draw our rectangle. It needs to be bigger. What fraction can we use? We could do 1/2. So that just means partitioning it down the middle, shading one part. 1/5 is less than 1/2. 1/5 of let's say this is a piece of cake. 1/5 of a piece of cake is way less than 1/2 of a piece of cake. Okay? And to check your greater than, less than, or equal to, you can compare the sizes. Work backwards. 1/2 is a bigger size, is greater than, you would swap this word out. 1/2 is greater than 1/5. Okay, just a way to check your work. So going backwards, you would switch this less to greater. 1/2 is greater than 1/5. If you're reading it from left to right, 1/5 is less than 1/2. Okay, the same way we do with multiplication and division, we flip it to check our answer. Okay. So you're going to practice creating your own or completing your own sentences here. Remember, the important thing is to make sure it's two things. One, make sure you keep the same whole. If there's a square, whatever you draw here should be a square as well. Okay? The other important thing is to make sure you pay attention to the sentence stem that is here in the middle to help you understand what type of fraction you need to draw. Does it need to be greater than or does it need to be less than? Okay. Next, number 8, you're doing the same thing. It says, fill in the blank with a fraction to make the statement true, and then draw a matching model. So you're just drawing the fraction at the bottom in that small box, and here you're drawing a picture with the same model, the same shape to make the sentence true. Okay, so number 8 is very similar to 1 through 7, which I modeled for you here. On your last sheet, you have 2 word problems. Number 9 says, Robert ate 1/2 of a small pizza. Elizabeth ate 1/4 of a large pizza. Elizabeth says, my piece was larger than yours, so that means 1/4 is greater than 1/2. Is Elizabeth correct? Explain your answer. Okay, so at this point, you're going through the word problem. You're figuring out who was correct, who had the larger size, and you're explaining your answer. So there should be at least 2 sentences here for number 9. Number 10, another word problem. Manny and Daniel each ate 1/2 of his candy, as shown below. So Manny had a candy bar, so did Daniel. Both of them ate 1/2. Manny said he ate more candy than Daniel because his half is longer. Is he right? Explain your answer. Okay. All right, so with these, you just need to think through. Take your time, scholars. Make sure that you're understanding exactly what the word problem is saying. And last but not least, you have your exit ticket. Your exit ticket says each fraction strip is 1 whole. No, this is lesson 10, sorry. For your exit ticket, it says, fill in the blank with a fraction to make the statement true. Draw a matching model. So your exit ticket is just like number 8. Number 1 is just like number 8 in your problem set. Then number 2 is a word problem. Tatiana ate 1/2 of a small carrot. Louis ate 1/4 of a large carrot. Who ate more? Use words and pictures to explain your answer. Okay. So the biggest thing here that you're going to have to consider is that Tatiana ate a small carrot and Louise ate a large carrot. So make sure you draw a picture to help you to understand what you're reading, because it could be a little bit tricky if you don't draw it out. So today's lesson is a little bit challenging. I understand that, but I'm still pushing you to try to figure it out. So at this point in the lesson, if you are still confused, please go back and review it. Review what we did before. Just take it one step at a time, and then come back and try your exit ticket. Remember, as always, if you do not understand something, have your parent or your guardian email me so I can help clarify so that you understand and feel confident in what you're learning. See you next time, scholars.